I'm gonna find, and I'm gonna kill every last one of them.
Let me ask you a question. What did you feel when you first saw that trailer? Do you remember how excited you were for the game? Well, 4 years later, the game is finally out. What do you feel now? No matter whether you liked the game or hated it, I think most of us can agree that there's something wrong with the story of The Last of Us Part 2. Before I talk about The Last of Us Part 2 story's biggest problem and try to rewrite the script, I want to quickly talk about Joel as a character. Joel, one of the main protagonists of the first Last of Us. The question is he a bad person? Many people say that he is a psychopath and an antagonist because he killed so many innocent people in the game. While he did in fact live with hunters, he seemed not to feel good about it, unlike hunters themselves, who continue to kill innocent people for loot.
No!
But Joel is not with hunters anymore, and he doesn't kill people just for loot or just for fun as many other psychopaths do. He does it only to survive. To survive and to save people he truly cares about. And then there is ending. While his choice was divisive and very selfish, he did everything to protect his loved one, even if it meant to sacrifice many to save one person. The only people who are innocent and good that Joel killed were the Fireflies. Even so, he killed them to save Ellie, the person he became to love as his daughter. Something many people can understand, if not sympathize with. It should also be noted that in the second part, we can see that Joel feels guilty about what he's done, not only to the Fireflies, but also to Ellie. I do feel like Joel started to understand the weight of his choice, and how this choice probably wasn't the best one. In the end, Joel is a good person, who made a bad decision.
You just come after her.
So Joel was still a character that many people cared about, even after the first game. And if this character dies in a new story, it must be done carefully, so you could keep the player engaged with the story. Something that The Last of Us Part 2 did incorrectly. Joel is killed by the new protagonist, Abby, in the very first hour of the game. So the biggest problem is not actually what happened, but rather when it happened. Abby killing Joel in the beginning would leave no room for making the player sympathize for Abby, a character that is in fact a good person, but it could not make you feel caring about her after what she has done, no matter how hard Naughty Dog tried. And if you don't like the character you play as, the experience is ruined forever. It's like killing Kratos in God of War in the beginning of the next game, and then making the player to play as his killer for the most part. Feels terrible, doesn't it? Even flashbacks do not work, as you understand that the character is forever gone. It should be noted that Joel's death is not a subversion, as many people say. If you watch the reaction of the first trailer of The Last of Us Part 2, you can see that many people actually speculated that Joel is gonna die in the game, and Ellie is gonna hunt for those who actually killed him. So again, the problem is not about what happened, it's when it actually happened, because it actually ruins the experience for many players. So, in my attempt to restructure the script, I will keep the main plot points of The Last of Us Part 2. They are the new protagonist Abby, Ellie's relationship with Dina, and Ellie's will to avenge Joel's death. It should be noted that I personally would have written an absolutely different story rather than the revenge plot, but for now I want to show that even this story could have been better if pacing and structure were different. To make sure that new characters and their relationships are well developed, we need to do what was done well in the first episode, playing as Ellie and Abby in parallel. For example, we play as Ellie in Jackson for an hour or so, and then immediately play as Abby in her base for same amount of time. The stories do not connect yet, but they will go parallel to each other for a while. With that, we got to know Abby more and develop sympathy for the character as she hasn't done anything bad yet. We may also find out more about her friends, loved ones, hopes and goals, but we do not know about her past. It's just another survivor for us. Also we have an opportunity to show how Ellie's relationship with Joel changed since we last saw them together. Not through the flashbacks, but in the main story in real time. It also helps with pacing. For example, when something goes intense with Ellie, the same could happen with Abby on the other side. So both of them go on different missions and places, but something goes terribly wrong and they have to leave their place of safety, such as Ellie searching for her friend that is gone MIA, and Abby gets cut off from her group by the enemy and has to run away from the base. In the middle of the story, both protagonists meet up by coincidence and have to survive together. At this point we have a strong connection with both of them, especially when we see them working together and maybe even developing a friendly relationship. Near the end of the game, let's say 3/4 of the game, Ellie invites Abby to Jackson to seek safety for a while, to which she agrees. There Abby sees Joel, and has flashbacks in which we find out that Joel killed Abby's father. She starts a fight in which Joel is mortally wounded, but runs away from Jackson. Joel still has a few moments to have the last conversation with Ellie before he dies. That is vital that this happens in the last parts of the game, not in the beginning. Now the players see Abby as an enemy, even though she is a good person, but we want to hunt her down for killing the main protagonist of the first game, Joel. For the last 2 hours of the game, we play only as Ellie, where we finally hunt down Abby. The last fight occurs between them, but unfortunately, no matter how the player tries, Abby will still apprehend and defeat Ellie. The last cutscene shows that Abby takes Ellie's unconscious body to her base, or maybe even Firefly's where they still try to find a cure. The cure is made, but Ellie is gone too. We see how the world is getting back on its feet, how suffering stops and infected are forever gone. So it's a happy ending. Sort of. The player feels an empty heart as both protagonists of the first The Last of Us are dead, even for the greater cause. The player finally understands what it is like to sacrifice the few to save the many.
It's kind of shitty.
Yeah.
In the end, I strongly believe that for any game, gameplay is more important than the story. However, The Last of Us is an exception. Gameplay-wise, The Last of Us is repetitive and mediocre at best. People don't love The Last of Us for its shooting, looting, or crafting, but we love this game for its characters. We cared about Joel, Ellie, and their relationship. What The Last of Us did perfectly is to tell a great story through the gameplay. That's what made it a masterpiece. The Last of Us is like watching a great movie that allows you to be the part of the story by playing as the main protagonist that you care about. Unfortunately, The Last of Us Part 2 fails on making you care about its characters as well as telling you a good story. A story that is not as memorable as the first one. Will people remember the second part as much as the first one? I don't know. What I do know is that personally for me, the story of Ellie and Joel ended when Ellie said,
Okay.